Whatever you may now think about ghosts, about spirits, put that on hold. The next hour could change everything. The story begins here in this sad ruin. We're on the fringes of the Australian outback. Through this place, we will reveal the chilling secrets of what may well be the most haunted town in the Western world.
This is not a place to send your spirits soaring. A fence cannot contain a soul. This is a town with a history. Australia's first mining town. The copper has long gone. Now nothing moves on what was once the busiest few acres on the continent. But many questions remain. A girls' reformatory. Almost a century ago, St. John's was suddenly closed. Why? And what of the stories of a crazed priest who continued to live on here? Is this desolate place the holy of haunteds in a tormented town? Could it be there are more spirits trapped here than anywhere on Earth?
Kapunda is the most haunted town that I have ever heard of anywhere, and that includes the United States, Canada, England, Europe. I'm looking at 34 different buildings and about just over 40 different ghostly appearances.
Even though it's just 80 kilometres north of Adelaide, Kapunda could be in the middle of nowhere. These days, it's shrunk back into its own valley, a forgotten neighbour between two of the world's great wine regions, the Barossa and the Clare. Kapunda is a town of once upon a time. Once a frontier town, the site of Australia's first mining boom, a place where men came to seek their fortunes from the copper-laden ground. Life was hard. Most found only disappointment. So where does this strangeness come from? Perhaps the harsh life that led to disease and early death, or could it be the town's deeply religious past? Lutherans, Anglicans, and Irish Catholics crammed into an isolated outpost. And what of the woman who will become Australia's first saint of the Catholic Church? Personal diaries of Mary McKillop tell of hauntings here.
We are here preparing this place as a home for young girl prisoners. Of course, this is the place that has been for so long known to be haunted.
Yet the town's solid homes talk of a time of hope, of certainty. More than 100 of them live on past the century mark, some of them with a history wrought in iron, wheat, minerals. Once home to 30,000, these days Kapunda rejoices in its history. But it's a history that chooses the night for return visits. This is a journey that will take us through the stories of this town. For here, there are places, buildings, ruins, so charged with the unusual, the inexplicable, that many locals refuse to go there.
But there are definitely ghosts around in Kapunda, that's definitely the case.
I still couldn't bring myself to go in that room in the dark.
And Barry's as white as a ghost hiding under the bed covers.
When it happens on a daily basis, you've got your children screaming. This is real.
It is strange. I suppose doing this is strange. It's just from this point on, it's really different, like degrees colder. I think that there's something here
but I don't think they're going to do me or anyone any harm. Writer Kevin McNeil has been studying Kapunda for most of the past decade. His discoveries are revealing and disturbing.
This is virtually like in the movie Aliens, where they say, in space, no one can hear you scream. No one will hear you scream here either.
This should be one of the most celebrated religious sites in Australia. Instead, it is its shame. Religion, St John's and its failure play a central role in what is troubling this town. It may well have been a girls' reformatory, and in itself not a place for nice girls, but nothing can account for stories of rogue priests, of pregnancies, abuse, of terminations, horror, and burials in unmarked graves.
Well, historically, it was the first Catholic church built outside of Adelaide in South Australia, the first Catholic priest ordained in South Australia, and the first Catholic priest who died extremely suddenly on duty in South Australia in 1860. The following 4 years, 4 other priests who came up here also died here in this manse. From that time on, Mary MacKillop and her group had a school here until 1877. The last time the church itself was used was in 1882, and then in 1897 Mary MacKillop was asked by Archbishop O'Reilly to help supervise and help with the building alterations for the Girls' Reformatory.
History may well explain the extraordinary power of this place and the malevolent presence of the insane priest-in-residence, Father James Martin. Why did the local priests make life so difficult for Mary MacKillop? What were they hiding?
The nastiness connected with that was connected with the fact that a priest was allowed to live up there, where the State Children's Council didn't want to. The Archbishop wouldn't take any notice of them. Certain events took place that allegedly resulted in pregnancies, terminations of same, because girls in the reformatory run only exclusively by women can't get pregnant unless there are males involved.
Father Martin lived those last tortured years here in this room.
He died on his own up there, a demented man in 1921.
Many still feel his brooding presence today.
I just feel as though I'm going to, if I walk across there, I'm dead. You know, it's a dead room.
For local artist Rick Thiel to just return to this place, he has to break through a spiritual barrier. Each previous journey has produced visitations, cold fear. For him, mid-afternoon is terrifying. Someone, something does not want him here.
It's just death. It's everything associated with death. I don't know how you guys can be in there. I can't. I just can't. I'm sorry. I just can't. You know, you guys seem to walk around and don't hear it, don't feel it. I don't know what it is. Let's.
Rick Thiel's time at St John's produced not only a fear of Father Martin, but his psychic powers seemed to detect a strangeness surrounding the unmarked section of the cemetery at the bottom of the hill. Here, some of the girls from the reformatory are buried.
That grave over in the corner worries me, though. Something unusual about that.
Rick's connection would also lead to a confronting visit to his home by a ghostly young girl.
She basically gave me a hug, and basically it was really quite casual, like, just in the neighbourhood, thought I'd call in. And I actually thought somebody had said hello and had just sort of flitted off. And then I realised that I was standing in this drenching cold rain, and I came inside as white as a ghost, no pun intended, and I just stood there, and everybody, suddenly a couple of people looked at me and said, "What's wrong?" my hands were boiling hot and absolutely dry, and it was 4 degrees that night, and where she'd hugged me was dry.
The year was 1980, when 14 Kapunda school children came out here on a dare. It was a bright moonlit night. They chose a double grave to gather around. They waited. Then came a raw, scraping sound. What they saw fixed them in terror. A young girl in a long white gown, carrying a lantern, moved through the cemetery. The seemingly transparent figure floated up the hill towards the reformatory before returning to the cemetery and disappearing into the earth. Earth that was left damp and with a message.
There was a round circle, wet circle. Within that circle were the numbers, lowercase, what they thought was a B, an R, and then a V with the number 9. I believed that they got the P, they got the B mixed up with a P, and PRV9 means Proverbs 9. I looked up Proverbs 9, and chapter 18 in Proverbs 9 states the following: "But he knoweth not that the dead are there," a lowercase h, so they didn't mean the divinity, "and her guests are in the depths of hell."
Kevin McNeil now believes he knows who that girl is, the same one who took comfort from Rick Thiel. Her name, Ruby Bland, resident of the reformatory, buried in an unmarked grave. It's said she died giving birth on November the 28th, 1909, the same day Archbishop O'Reilly announced the closure of St John's. It is almost as if this place lives on memories. History plagues Kapunda. One of Australia's most gruesome mass murders happened nearby. This very cell held the 7 Aboriginal men accused of killing Mrs. Rainbird and her young family. Every day during the inquest, the men huddled inside the cell while mounted troopers tried to control a lynch mob baying for their blood. They were eventually taken to Adelaide for trial. The 4 found guilty were hung. Today, strange things still happen in both the cells and the adjacent courthouse.
There's no way I'll sleep in the courthouse at night.
Clive Hughes is the proud owner of a building he wouldn't go into at night, until now.
But I've had some strange experiences in here, so I'm expecting to hear some noises, maybe some footsteps or some banging noises. Everything's very quiet at the moment, but I'm not comfortable in here. No, I'm going to keep moving. I think I'll move outside now, it's not too flush in here. No, I won't go in the courthouse again.
Clive lasted 8 minutes, turned off the night vision camera and left. It seems the courthouse has been like this for ages. Former owner Sonia Lee had more than one experience.
I walked up to a couple of steps up to the podium, and I felt this leg across my 2 legs, and I tripped and I fell flat on my face. And I thought, well, this is strange, dreaming, you know, because I really could feel it. I was fast asleep and I woke up, and And there was this evil, you could feel it. And it was that bad I didn't even dare move or breathe.
Normal people here see things, feel things. Visitations and sightings do not only plague believers, skeptics like Laura Marshall admit that.
Well, I was out at the reformatory, it would have been a couple of years ago now, and I actually went out, I was doing a newspaper article for one of the local papers, and I decided that I would actually look at some of the early graves that actually are out at the reformatory. And basically looking straight ahead on the left-hand window of the front of the reformatory, I saw a black figure of a man pass through there with quite a wide brim hat on and like a long black cloak. And I wouldn't have believed it, but I was actually with somebody else at the time, and they looked at me and said, "Did you see that?" And I looked at them and said, "Did you see that?"
But it is not about seeing things. Stare at a wall long enough and you'll start seeing things. A face, a figure. But in this town, there are so many with experience that many seem to have shared.
I was over there looking out towards the front door. The front door was open, moonlight night, and a figure walked across the doorway. And I didn't say anything. I went out. I came back, I picked up a piece of paper and I sketched what I saw.
It is the likeness of Monsignor George Williams, parish priest, who died in Kapunda in 1920.
I heard 3 distinct knocks, very strong knocks. And I just laid and listened, and they would come in groups of 3, and then there'd be a small gap between them. And I looked around the room and thought, now where could they be coming from? And there was just nowhere. Out of sheer terror, I just blurted out the Lord's Prayer and it stopped. And from then on, more things started to occur. The TV would be turned up full volume. The radio in the kitchen would be turned up full volume. I had some little statues that would be turned around, facing the other way. And the smells were probably the most terrifying. And I remember one night I came home from a rehearsal and my brother was outside of the house quite distressed, and I said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "I'm not going back inside that house." And I said, "Why? What's happened? Where are the kids?" He said, "Inside the house." And I said, "Well, what's happening? What's going on?" He said, there were footsteps and no one there. There was a baby crying. He said, the dog and the cat went crazy. He said, "I'm not going back in there." And so I went inside the house, and yes, the dog and cat just dived at my legs and would not leave my side. And I rang the minister and he said, "Just get out of the house."
At the minister's urging, she told her story to the congregation. She says half believed her and the other half dismissed her. Kapunda is one of those rare Australian towns where there were almost more churches than pubs. By any reckoning, it is a very religious town, even today. But religion has no answer for the challenge facing Donna Warner. Her home is literally infested with ghosts.
When something happens to you immediately, it frightens the life out of you. But when it happens on a daily basis, you've got your children screaming, coming out of rooms through the day because there's a man in the room, or your child wakes up a week after Christmas screaming because there's a little boy in bed with him. And you know very well that there's an elderly man that walks around here, you've seen them yourself, or you know that there's a little boy drowned 100 years ago in our underground rainwater tank. You know they're here. You have clocks that don't work, that tick. You have cupboards that open and shut in front of you in broad daylight. You have images walk past the window and you know there's no one here. You know, we had a pram went up our driveway 20 foot on a day exactly like today with very little wind. We can't explain that.
If there is one building that everyone believes is the most haunted place in the town itself, it's this place, the North Kapunda Hotel. The pub has seen busier days, but nowadays many guests live on here, ignoring the moderate tariff.
I'll leave those handles in a position. And quite often I'll go down there and that's not how I left them. So I started then to be deliberate in how I set them up, and invariably they do change.
Imagine how it would feel not to be welcome in your own business. When Heather Hogan took over here, she knew it was haunted. After all, the previous owner, Sheila Puro, told her.
We sort of heard babies crying upstairs, and we went looking for them and couldn't find them, and they slowly went away. Doors opening and closing, shoes going missing quite a lot. You know, you get one, you haven't got the other one, you go and it's in another room. Crockery, cutlery on the table. When some of the girls, when they set the dining room up, went out and come back in again, and all the knives would be missing.
This room has a feeling. I have no idea what I feel in this room, but I don't feel me in this room. And I have a piano back in the corner with a little table lamp on it, which I switch off before I go to bed. And there's lots of ornaments and stuff on that piano. And invariably, when I walk towards that piano, those ornaments rattle. And I didn't take a lot of notice of it in the beginning because these floors are wooden and uneven and whatever. But then I started to take a bit of notice because sometimes it didn't happen. And I thought, well, that's a bit strange. Why is it not happening tonight, and why did it happen last night? So I thought, well, maybe there is somebody living in this room. So now I go up to there, and if it's happening, I just say, well, excuse me, I'm just about to turn the light off and good night, and I walk out.
But it is the cellar of this hotel that has the most sinister reputation. Alone in the cellar, Heather Hogan feels uncomfortable.
Now you can see here 2 rooms this would have been. This would have been the servants' quarters. You can see a fireplace down the end there, and perhaps a bedroom or something like that. I don't particularly like that room. It doesn't give me a very good vibes in that room at all. Because, well, I don't know, there seems to be somebody else living down here who either doesn't want me around, I don't know. But I don't feel really, really welcome in that room. At the back of the hotel, there's another staircase for the cellar. They have a pair of batwing doors, which are very heavy, full length of the doors. They've got no locks on, but they do come in together. They do open outwards. Now, for those doors to open outwards on their own, you're going to have a very strong wind internal of the hotel. That's absolutely impossible. I shut them, and I'll get up in the morning and they're open.
Doors that open by themselves, the cold, the crying, the fear that many feel for this cellar. Can it be just imagination? I was not to know at the time, but soon I would have my own disturbing confrontation in the North Kapunda hotel cellar.
What's that? Oh, shit.
Like many old Australian towns, most of Kapunda's houses are outwardly very charming. They sit comfortably, aged facades invigorated with paint and new iron. But some have inclusions that make them very hard to sell.
The house was number 1 Chapel Street, I believe. And a few years ago we had the opportunity to put the property on the market, and there were a couple of ladies that came through, and the house is virtually 2 stories, but the base story is underground. And this lady was really very, very frightened. After we'd shown her through, she just turned a very wider shade of grey and ran out of the building saying, "I can't stand the feel in here." The property was rented out for some time before we put it on the market, and it had nothing to do with my office, but it was rented out, and I believe that some of the people that stayed there said at night time there were some very strange noises, doors used to open and close, funny winds going through the place and whatever. And they even used to lock the doors by themselves, some people said, so who's to say? We don't know.
Sifting the secrets of this town, Kevin McNeil uncovered uncomfortable stories. Like the house on the old Adelaide Road, there's an unspoken agreement that it will never be rented to women of childbearing age.
I call the pregnant angry house, and that is a house where young women who go to live there, if they become pregnant while they're there, there's a whole lot of very nasty poltergeist type activity which turns into something even nastier. When I say poltergeist, it means that crockery starts flying around the room and chairs get moved, etc. But eventually it gets to the stage where not only the oppression is so bad in the house, but the women will start to bleed from everywhere. And on one occasion, a woman was taken, bundled into a car by friends to head up towards the hospital. And by the time they got halfway up the road, up Main Street, the bleeding had stopped, and when they got to the hospital, they couldn't find any reason why she should have been bleeding in the first place.
Some of the spirits here are malevolent, desirous to do evil to others. But many seem just to be seeking solace that avoided them in life.
It's around 12:30, 1 o'clock. There's a nudge on the end of the bed, and it woke me up, and to find out it was a child about, I suppose, 9, 10 years old, in a white gown, long blonde hair, probably all past halfway down her back, and just nudging the end of the bed.
I got home and Barry's as white as a ghost hiding under the bed covers. And he just said, "How long you been home?" I said, "Well, I've just walked in the back door." He said, "No, you haven't. You've been here for a long time, haven't you?" I said, "No, I just walked in the back door." And he said, "Well, there's somebody in the house."
For Barry and Margaret Jarvis, there's no escaping their ghost. 4 times they've moved house, and so has it.
As Barry said, she takes 6 to 8 months and she finds us. I don't honestly know. She's still here. Why? I don't know. When she'll go, I don't know. As I said, we've never gone into it any further because she's never done us any harm.
It seems the ghost's lifelong attraction is the Jarvis's daughter.
My vision is she's probably a little bit small, just about this high, just a little bit small, and she wears white dresses and she's blonde. And most times I do see her holding a noose, and other times I do see her carrying a baby in her arms.
Perhaps it's this small town's matter-of-fact approach to their ghosts that allows Kapunda to go about its business untroubled. But it doesn't answer the question, why Kapunda and why so many ghosts?
One theory that's been espoused around the place is that because of the height of the water levels and the amount of metal that's there, basically a magnetic attraction type thing has been created.
Strange things just keep piling up. On the first night, we captured this impossible image at sunset. It is not the moon.
What? Not a flare. It's not a flare. There's not a flare because I'm panning. You would get a... Wow. It's not a flare.
My handheld digital camera switched off at the exact moment I had a very strange encounter. And then, when I tried to explain what happened, the camera suffered electrical interference in the same location and at the precise time that I mentioned the encounter.
There's nothing wrong with the camera. And the sounds, just to clarify, those like they weren't always 3. Sometimes they were 3, 2, 1.
The zoom on the shot you are now watching operated of its own accord. It was later discovered the electric zoom control was not connected to the camera. And what is the explanation for this? Photographs of the old Catholic manse. The family that lived here swears it's haunted and took these photos. experts are at a loss. Same too with these shots from the cellar of the North Kapunda Hotel. What are those smoke-like images? There are strange powers that encircle this place. But why are these people so at home, so comfortable with their ghosts? Perhaps it's because they have no choice. There is one thing the people who live here will avoid at all costs: staying alone overnight in their town's most haunted buildings. But it's something I simply had to do. This, for me, is the point at which Kapunda's story becomes a personal journey, not just a search for something outside the normal, but a test of my own inner strength. 3 nights that changed my life.